While many are still holding out for a true successor to the EOS R, it might come as a shock that Canon has finally discontinued the line after just 5 years. So what happened? Well, stick around after this short break for all the details. But first, please do me a favor. Follow me on Twitter, but most importantly, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything and really does help this channel grow. And let's grow it all the way to 50,000. I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit surprised, a little bit shocked. The EOS R hasn't been around that long. It was announced in October of 2018, and that's not even 5 years, and it didn't even start shipping right away. So less than 5 years to have a camera discontinued, a hallmark of the R system, the first R system camera. It's a little bit surprising. You just have to look at the 5D Mark IV. That camera was announced back in what, 2015, 2016? It's coming up to what, 9, 8 years? But it just goes to show you that there isn't enough demand for the EOS R, even with it being on sale. And you can purchase it right now at Adorama or B&H. That's $400 off. And I don't think it's going to go back to that regular $17.99. It's currently $13.99, and when it's gone, it's gone. $13.99 for the EOS R. What I really liked about this camera is it had a 30.3 megapixel sensor, and this has been one of the frustrations to those looking for an EOS R successor, the EOS R Mark II. Well, if we look at Canon's lineup, we already have a successor to the EOS R, and it's in one of two cameras, the Canon EOS R6, which is now the R6 Mark II, and the Canon EOS R8. But both of those have a resolution of 24.2 megapixels. We don't have a single camera that can shoot, well, around 32.5 megapixels or 30 megapixels like the EOS R. Well, okay, we do, but not in full frame. We do have the Canon EOS R7 at 32.5 megapixels. And of course, we have the Canon 90D. Oh, sorry, that's a DSLR, but 32.5 megapixels. And in its mirrorless version, an APS-C camera, we have the EOS M, the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. But in today's modern R system, we only have a single camera, and it's not full frame, that can do around 30 megapixels. And that was one of the frustrations with the R6, that it was only 20 megapixels. And the R8, also around 24 megapixels. So there was a little bit of frustration. But what was significant about this camera is it was a way of Canon saying, look, sorry, we know we're late to the marketplace. We're going to play catch up. Here's a full frame mirrorless camera. We're serious. And then in the spring, well, not even the spring, in January, they announced the RP. But then we had to wait a whole year to start getting teased about this new camera, the Canon EOS R5, before it was being announced in July, early July of 2020. And we had 5 months of lead up of incredible rumored specifications that this camera that was going to be able to do 8K RAW, 45 megapixels, completely blow away the Canon EOS R as though it wasn't even there. And this camera today, it can be had for $33.99 at Adorama, B&H, and across the United States, $33.99. And by the way, they're tossing in a free battery grip, the BG, what is it? You know what? The free battery grip, the $350 one, not the $33.99. And if we look at the 5D Mark IV, it's $24.99. Of course, the EOS R today is $13.99. $400 off, $13.99. I don't see it going back up to $17.99, $13.99 until they're all gone. And all this information comes to us thanks to the Japanese publication Map Camera. The EOS R. I still have memories of this camera. It's one of those cameras where I was eagerly waiting the announcement because I had the Canon 70D. I still do. This camera here came out in 2013. Or was it 2013 or 2012 now? See, my memory's starting to go. But this is the 70D. And in 2017, it was starting to feel old in the tooth. This 80D had come out, and it was just a minor update to the 70D. And so when we had the announcement of the EOS R, I'm ordinary filmmaker, name of the channel, I'm primarily a video shooter. I looked at the video specifications of the EOS R, and compared to what Sony was offering, I felt rather dejected. I wasn't too happy with the EOS R, and I said to myself, I thought, okay, if this is what we're getting now, and we're probably going to have to wait 2 to 3 years to get a refresh of that camera, the EOS R, I thought, that's it. I'm switching. I'm moving to Sony. What is this fabled A7S III that's supposed to be coming out? At that point, we were 4 years in. It was due out at any point. So I was waiting to see what that camera would do. And nothing happened. I just started my channel. And then in January, we got wind of this new camera, the Canon EOS R. 8K video, RAW at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, full sensor readout with autofocus and IBIS. And while that might seem, you might be used to that today, all you have to do is go back to 2018. And do you remember, we were getting video with motion JPEG. We were getting 1.6, 1.7 times crop in 4K. We still have the 30-minute record limit, but you know, to have 8K RAW, 30 frames per second with IBIS, there was no IBIS up until this point. This was the first camera to have IBIS, to have autofocus, all that functioning at the same time with much better dynamic range and low light performance, and still at 45 megapixels, and to be able to shoot 20 frames per second with the CF Express Type B card. It was a shock. Many of us didn't believe that there's no way this could be true. How could Canon leapfrog the competition? And at the time, boy, did I get a lot of comments saying that there's no way this is true, this is fake, this is ridiculous. And then as Canon started to say, hey, development announcement, and then started confirming bits and pieces all the way up to NAB 2020, and wow, yeah, 8K RAW and all this stuff that we know to be true now, it was a bit of a shocker. And we were kind of left wondering, so what's the catch? 2 minutes of record time in 8K, how can it do it? And of course, when it was announced, we had all this kerfuffle about overheating, but fast forward to today, 2023, with firmware 1.6, with that auto heat power off temp mode set to high, I've been able to record up to 80 degrees Celsius without any overheating whatsoever, and the Def Director in Texas was able to do the same in 4K HQ as well as 8K RAW without any overheating at 96 degrees Fahrenheit, close to 40 degrees Celsius. It was a turning point, and yes, it felt like in 2018 that we wouldn't see a camera better than the EOS R for a good 2 to 3 years, but in fact, all we had to wait was about a year and a half for the Canon EOS R5, and we also got the R6 at the same time, both offering that Digic X image processor that came out in Canon's flagship 1DX Mark III. And now look at the lineup today. It's mostly filled out. We have the Canon EOS R50. I'm not going to talk about the 100. We have the R50, an incredible camera at around, what, $700 that can do 6K over sample 4K, not crop, full sensor readout. We've got the R7, we've got the R10, we've got the R6 Mark II, the R5, the R3. And the only thing that I think is really missing is the Canon EOS R1, which we do know is coming. It's been confirmed by Canon. It will be announced most likely in the first quarter of 2024. But I still think there is a hole in Canon's lineup, and this makes an awful lot of sense. The EOS R has been discontinued, but what about its sibling, the Canon EOS RP? At $999, I think that price point for a full-frame camera makes an awful lot of sense. I really do hope that Canon is planning, and when they did talk about the Canon EOS R8, they did make a mention to everybody that was reviewing the camera that it isn't a replacement for the EOS RP. So, could we be seeing a $999 Canon EOS RP successor? A camera without an EVF, which was rumored at the time, and to come in at $899? I don't think that $899 price point is going to hold, but $999 entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera, it would be, well, the best on the market at that price point, because right now, the only camera at that price point is the Canon EOS RP. You have to start looking at $1,400 and $1,500 to find other camera manufacturers' entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera. So today is a bit of a sad day, but in a way, we can look back at that EOS R as Canon customers as a way to celebrate what came shortly thereafter. We didn't know this in 2018 when we looked at the rather anemic capabilities of that camera, because if you recall, shooting continuous with autofocus, you were lucky to get around 2 to 3 frames per second that were actually good shots that were out of focus. 2 to 3 frames per second on a camera that was rated at 8 frames per second. Here we are today, even the Canon EOS R50 can do most of what the EOS R could do, but better. And it's pretty exciting times. What we're seeing with everything coming out by camera manufacturers today, it's hard to find a bad camera. And even Panasonic, with their Lumix cameras, finally ditching. This is pretty impressive. They finally ditched early this year their contrast detect depth from defocus autofocus system. Boy, I haven't had to say that in a while. And while we're still waiting on the S1H Mark II and the S1 Mark II, I think there's a pretty good chance that we could get one or two of those cameras announced this fall, September or October, or maybe even early November. It's been over 5 years, or is it over 4 years now? I'm losing track of time. I believe it's 5 years. We're definitely in need of those cameras. If it's not 5 years, it's coming up to the 5-year mark. We're definitely due for a refresh of those cameras. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, whether it be the firmware update that we are still getting for the Canon EOS R5, the R5 Mark II, the R1, the S1H, or anything else, please go ahead and subscribe, but make sure you also choose all notifications. And if you want to stay up to date on all the minor news and rumors, then go ahead and follow me on Twitter. But one thing is very important. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest price discounts, then you definitely want to follow me on Twitter too, and use these affiliate links that'll take you to Adorama and B&H. I've also got them in the description because right now we're seeing incredible sales. Like I mentioned, the Canon EOS R is on sale, $400 off for $13.99 for an entry-level full-frame camera. And it's not even an entry-level, but based on the pricing of cameras today, the EOS R still stands up as a pretty decent stills camera. Although, like I said, 2 to 3 frames per second with continuous autofocus, and the rolling shutter is a bit bad. Who's kidding who? You know what? I recommend the R8 over that camera, but we're seeing other deals like the Canon EOS R5, $500 off with a free battery grip at both B&H and Adorama. And of course, the S1H, $500 off. The Nikon Z6 and Z7 Mark IIs, $400 and $300 off respectively. We're seeing a huge amount of sales. The only company that isn't giving us a lot of discounts is Sony, and I think that's because Sony says, yeah, you know what? We think we offer value in what we have, and that probably means that they don't have anything, well, to replace those cameras that they have for sale anytime soon, except for the A7C Mark II. That is due out sometime probably in August. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon.